Okay, looks like we're up and running. Hey, everybody, it's the 19th of March, 2024. This is the first session of Mesh Live Coding. At Gimbal Labs, we've been starting a few specific live coding sessions where we get together for 1 hour each week to learn stuff and build stuff together. Now, on Mondays, we're doing a Cardano Go PBL, and we have a bit of a plan for that one. On Tuesdays, starting today, we'll meet for Mesh Live Coding. And let me, just in case anybody's seeing this later, this meeting happens 1300 to 1400 UTC on Tuesdays. But we don't have any formal agenda for this meeting. The only rule is we're going to keep the focus to building stuff with Mesh, answering questions people have, thinking about what people want to build or learn. And if there's a long list of stuff, we'll work on setting priorities. We've been practicing that over at Gimbal Labs. But one of the things we won't do is go on detours into things other than Mesh. This is 1 hour per week where we can build stuff together. So I just wanted to hear from everybody today regarding the topic at hand, the Mesh.js libraries. What are some things you want to build? Chris, I know you had some ideas, but let's jump right over to here. And you can either add sticky notes to this screen, or if you have things that you just want to share by unmuting or dropping in the chat, I'll take notes from everybody. And this will give us a little map of some things that we might do in the weeks to come. So how should we use this time? What does everyone want to build?
Well, I would like to, well, I have many things on mind, but the first thing that I would like to do, I was playing around and I didn't find a way to make it, is just to look for a specific policy ID in the wallet that we connected to the app and display the NFTs of that policy ID. I mean the image, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's great. Yep. That's like a perfect example of something that we could cover in one of these sessions. That's great.
Maybe if somebody that connect the wallet had that policy ID in the wallet, give access to another feature in the application.
Excellent. Excellent. What else?
Maybe have the option to switch between different policy IDs. Have like a switch button to choose two different collections or map the wallet and see if they have some, I mean, two different policies IDs and be able to switch from one to the other one.
Nelson, I know that you've been playing with some of the new lower level APIs. Does anything come to mind that would be exciting to look at together?
I think the most exciting thing is that most of the syntax has a mapping with how we build transactions in Cardano CLI. So if you try to build any sort of transaction using Cardano CLI, you can just put it in one site and compare to it, line by line, and see how nicely it matches with the new lower level APIs. But yeah, that one's great.
Yeah, I'm really excited to look at that together. How to use the new mesh lower level APIs. We'll come up with things to build as we go. What else? Demi, thanks for making it today. When you think about building with mesh, what do you want to learn how to do, or what do you want to build?
Hey, James. Hello, guys. Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you guys. Sorry I'm late. I had internet complications. Uh, so, um, uh, Fundamentally, I just want to get started with Mesh overall. Never had the time to learn Mesh. Um, I, the reason I want to get my hands on Mesh is to take the onboarding course on Damio, on the Adamo platform, when it gets um, redeployed. And I think most of it is written in Mesh and whatnot. So it would be nice to have Mesh in my arsenal as well as a Cardano dev. So that's what brought me here, basically.
Cool. So just a general purpose overview, anything we have time to do is probably helpful, it sounds like.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yes.
Great. Great. Good. All right. Well, I'm thinking about hmm. I'm thinking about how we can maybe start from some of these concepts that Chris shared, just to give us all a way of getting started. And then, yeah, we can see how far we get with that. Eventually, we'll get to some lower level APIs, but also I think a lot of this stuff is going to start to expose some new ideas. So here's what we've got. Let me share screen over here. Just a sec. All right, so over here, thanks for bearing with me. Sorry, everybody. Over here, I have a basic project set up and ready to go. And I'm going to start right here. In the package JSON file, you can see that Mesh Core and Mesh React are both installed. Okay. And then the rest of this project just has a couple of little demos, but actually some of these demos are going to end up being useful to us. So before we go any farther, let's just take a look at what this project has for us. Oh, did I not? Install it? There we go. Okay. So I just realized I hadn't installed the dependencies here since the last time I ran this. There we go. All right, cool. Our server is running. And what I'm working from right now is a basic mesh template. And there's documentation on the mesh website for how to set this up. And I expect people to try that documentation on their own. And when you get stuck, of course, you should come here with questions. But I'm not going to go through the steps right now of just setting up a project for the first time. Suffice to say that I have a project running right here, and I can jump over to my browser to see what this thing looks like. It's really simple. It's just some boilerplate. Okay. So this is the project I have running. And first things first, actually, let me make sure I'm on pre-prod. Give me 1 second here. Okay. And all right, so I have a Nami wallet in this browser, and it's hooked up to pre-prod. So that when I come to this homepage, and we can look at the source code for this in just a second, but the first idea we have right here is just this concept of connecting a wallet at all. Okay, so when I do connect, a couple of things show up on the screen, and this starts to get directly at, Chris, what you're talking about. This part is just showing that I have a Nami wallet connected. If I had connected Eternal, it would say Eternal right here. It is connected. Here's a state variable, right? So we're using a hook that shows us when the wallet is loading in the first place. You can use this to make some really nice UI. And we're not going to worry about the experimental features for now. But then directly underneath this, you can see a list of the assets in my wallet. You can see the policy ID for each. You can see the asset name for each. And the unit right here is, you see this string right here, that's the policy ID. And so the unit is just the concatenated string of the policy ID. And then this piece right here, what's this? 5050424C. This right here is the hex string of the asset name. So PPBL 2023 teacher. When you convert this over to hex, you get this string right here. And that's why you see how it says 5050? That's PP. And then 42 is B, 4CL, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so now we can look at all of the assets in a wallet, and this gets us halfway to what Chris was talking about. Once I can see the assets in a wallet, I can start to do things with them. Any questions at this point before we take a quick look at the source code? Okay, so you can see I'm just on my local host. There's nothing at the end of this route. So that means I'm on the index page of my React application. And we're using Next.js here. This is a pretty straightforward Next application. For anybody who's familiar with Next, we're just using the pages router for now. because it's really easy to get started with. I've got some examples that we can look at together. But first, let's look at this index page. All right, so this page right here, and there's a little bit of React stuff I have to change. You can see that I'm getting this warning right here. My wallet component cannot be used as a JSX component. It will be kind of boring to watch me fix this right now, even though we would want to do that for production. But I'm going to skip that step for just the moment, because we just want to play with Mesh a little bit. We're not building for production right now. And you can see on this main page, there's not much here. It's a pretty short file. We got a couple of unused imports. We don't need those. But most importantly, we're showing the My Wallet component that's written in the components directory and has that name, My Wallet component. And then same thing for My Wallet asset component. That's right here. So this is the one that's showing the list of assets in my connected wallet. This is the one right here that gives us all of this stuff. So let's look at that component. If I open it up, I should be able to find what's the path components. So components, and then My Wallet asset component. That looks good. And there's a heading right here. This is my assets component. You can see that right here. No big deal. And then there's actually not much happening here. Look, we're using a hook imported from Mesh React called use assets. And then all we have to do is call that hook, store it as a variable, and then we're just printing it to the screen. Pre is an HTML tag that'll just format text as monospaced font, okay, pre-formatted, and it'll maintain the line breaks in, for example, a string. So inside of these pre-tags, we're just running the JSON stringify command. This takes any JSON object like asset, converts it into a string so that we can print it on the page. And so this single line right here is rendering everything in assets. And that is what we see right here. Who has questions about this part? Okay, so let's first tackle the question Chris brought about giving people different access if they have a different token. Let's do that first, okay? And we can make a really simple example of this, okay? Now, there's a lot of ways to look at the data you're getting from a hook like this one. Instead of doing JSON stringify right here, I could, for example, just console.log my assets. And so let's do that, and let's take a look at what we see here. Okay, so of course, if I connect my wallet, once again, I can see those assets right here. But if I open up the dev tools in my browser, I'm also going to see, right, this is logged from line 6 of the My Wallet asset component. What's on line 6? Oh yeah, that's where I console log, line 6. There it is. And what is it logging? An array with 23 items in it. And these right here are the same items we're seeing on the screen right here. So does that look like about 23? Probably. All right. And each of these items has exactly what we see on the screen. It has an asset name, a fingerprint, a policy ID, a quantity, and a unit. This order looks like it's alphabetical right here. And for some reason, this is not printed in alphabetical order right here, but it doesn't really matter. This is just an object. It doesn't matter what order we're listing our key and value pairs, okay? So if I have all of this data now loaded in, I can start to do some things with it. And one really simple thing I could do is I could just say, well, hey, does this wallet, I don't care which one of these we use. Let's do this one right here from last year's PPBL 2023 course. Okay. I want the page to look different if somebody has this asset right here. So how is that going to work? Well, there's a lot of different choices right here. And this is where we get to the point of building useful logic. And this logic is going to have more to do with TypeScript or JavaScript than it's going to have to do with Mesh itself. But there's some really good exercises we can do. And really any TypeScript course you take, any documentation you read is probably going to have some exercises like the one we can do right now to take this array of 23 objects and figure out, does it have an item inside of it that has, say, this policy ID right here? Okay. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to just remove this line, or I'll comment it out. All right, so that's not on the page anymore. So now I simply have the list of assets in my console. There they are, but there's nothing showing up with my assets component. And let's just put a question here. We'll say, oops. Do you have the required token, right? Depending on your application logic, you can write whatever you want right here to tell the user the story of what you're trying to do. We'll just say, do you have the required token? And then we're going to add a little bit of logic right here. And to do that, right inside of basically, this is a TSX file, which basically means it's a React file that combines TypeScript and HTML in a really useful way. And inside of like this right here looks like HTML, but inside of some curly brackets, I can pull in some variables. Okay, for example, that's what you saw on this line right here. We had pre, and then we had these curly brackets with the JavaScript method, JSON.stringify, and we passed some parameters to it. Here, I want to say assets. And I can't just put the assets on the page. Let's see what kind of, look, this gives me the error. Okay, yeah, that error is not showing up in the right spot. That's okay. Let's just get rid of this so it's not in the way. There we go. That's the error I want to see. All right. Type asset list or undefined is not assignable to type React node. This is a really helpful message, but if you don't understand it yet, that's okay. The point is assets is this object, and we need to either stringify it like I just showed you, or process it into something that's useful and can be put on the screen. But also, we can only do something here if it's not undefined, right? If it actually exists. So one really simple thing we can do is right here, we could say assets, question mark, and then we could say, yes, there are assets loaded, or No, there are not assets loaded, okay? So this code works. Let's just go take a quick look at what happens in the UI. Going back over here. I can see, here's this sentence, do you have the required token? And then I see right under that, no, there are not assets loaded. However, if I connect my wallet, watch this sentence change. Yes, there are assets loaded. Cool. So this is just React, okay? And if you're already familiar with this, thanks for letting me take the time just to get us started here. But you can see this is how we start to build logic like Chris was describing. And in a production application, obviously the logic is going to be a little bit more complicated than, yes, you do have assets, or no, you don't. But this basic idea right here is going to be used often whenever you're building a UI with JavaScript or TypeScript. So we don't want to know just that there are assets loaded or no, there are not. We actually have a little bit more of a complicated question than this. It's not enough just that there are assets. We want to know if there are assets and something else. Let's see. Assets dot, and here's a list of a bunch of different JavaScript methods I can run on an array. What do I want to do? Maybe includes would be good. Does this list include something? Okay. But a lot of these, like find or find last or find index, they're hard to use directly inline, okay? So, well, let me show you something here. Let me show you something here. So I happen to know that in the first element of my list, I happen to know that because I'm just looking at it in my console, I happen to know that the unit is equal to this string right here. I'm just copying this from my console log. Oops, doubled up the quotes. Here we go. Okay. So now this says, if there are assets and if the unit in the first item in the list matches this string, which we know it does, then we could say, yes, you have the asset. Or you could say, no, you don't. Okay. And let's just go make sure that works. Obviously, my wallet's not connected, so no, I do not. But if I connect my wallet, I can see, yes, you have the asset. But hopefully you can see the problem with this approach. If I change the index here to the next one, and I save it, and I connect my wallet again, now I still see that, no, I don't have this. And if I was building for real right now, I would never want to write logic like this that relies on me knowing where in the list the asset I'm looking for is actually going to show up. Okay. I'm just showing this as a basic example and to inspire us to look at something that's going to be a little bit better than the way I'm doing this right here. Okay. Sometimes it's possible to put some logic inside of these curly brackets, But often I want to do this part right here separately. And so that's what I'm going to do. Now let's pull this out of here. This logic is still going to work. That's okay. But what I really want to do is to be able to check this entire list of assets, right? List of assets for the asset in question. And this is where we start to think about React hooks being really helpful. If you're not familiar with hooks, the basic idea is that anytime you go to any web application, you expect it to behave like an application and not like a website from 1995. We expect to be able to do things on the page and then for the data on the page to be updated accordingly, okay? And hooks allow us to build a component that can handle dynamically changing data. So let's look at an example of that. First of all, let's make a new use state hook. And I'm just going to make this a simple one. Has required token and set has required token. Let's add the D right here. And this is a use state function that's just going to be a Boolean for now. I have a red line because I'm not importing a use state. I need to import it from React. There we go. So now, instead of checking whether assets exists, I'm just going to be able to use has required token right here. And now I can add some other logic that changes whether this is true or false. It's going to start false, right? When somebody first shows up in my application, I'm not going to assume they already have the token. Well, what would have to happen for them to prove it? Well, if they were to connect their wallet and I could look at the list of assets and I could find some token in that list, then I could run set has required token to change this value to true. And then this would be true. And then the words, yes, you have the asset would appear. Let's take a look at how that works. Now I'm using one of the two most common hooks right now from React. It's called use state. But I'm also going to use one, I'm also going to use one called use effect. This hook essentially allows us to change some data based on the effect of something else changing. Let's take a look at how this works. I could write use effect like this. This just means it's an anonymous function, right? I'm just gonna do a function. It doesn't need to have a name because it only runs inside of this use effect. And I can write my function logic in between these curly braces. And then we'll get to these brackets in just a second, okay? What I want to do is go back to what I was thinking about before down here with some array manipulation. But now, since I'm not trying to squeeze it in to my actual UI component, I can write a little bit more complex logic right here, okay? So let's say assets dot find, okay? An asset that has something true about it, okay? And look how there's a question mark here because that means that we know that assets might be undefined. So this question mark basically says, hey, only do this if assets is defined in the first place. If it's undefined, you can just skip this, okay? Well, what asset do I want to find? Let's Go back here for a second. Connect the wallet, right? Let's just grab this one again. This one has a policy ID that looks like this. Okay, let's bring that into our code. So I'm also going to just set up a variable. Okay. And this is we'll call this, I can call this whatever I want, but let's call this the required policy ID, and it's just this string. Oh, I did it again. Doubling up. Cool. So this is the policy ID we want. And now I can go and I can say, okay, go through the list of assets and find the one where the asset dot policy ID, and I'm going to talk about why this red line is showing up in just a second and what we could do about it, but it's actually fine, is equal to the required policy ID. Okay. Find the asset that has this policy ID. Now, this alone is not enough because find right here is actually going to return its own list of assets. Okay. So I need to save this right here as another variable. So I'm going to say const, we'll call this the target asset. Okay, and now target asset is going to be either an asset or undefined. Oh, okay, yeah, find just gives me one. So that's why it's saying just one of them here. Great. If I did filter, it would give me a list. Okay, so we're going to find an asset with this policy ID, and then we're going to have just one of them. Okay. And then I can say if there is a target asset, then let's run this piece right here, set has required token to true. Let's see if this works. So now I should get true. And let's just say success or nope right here, just to keep it a little bit briefer. All right, so if this connected wallet has an asset with this policy ID, it should say success. Right now, my wallet's not connected, so it says nope. But if I can connect my wallet here, we look at the list of assets. It still says nope. Why? Great, that didn't work. That's even more fun.
I guess the policy ID is missing the first number.
Oh, did I miss the first number? Excellent. Oh, look at that. I missed the one right here. Beautiful. All right, so if I go back here, you're saying, and I add that one correctly, and I save it, is that going to do it? Still, did I just not copy the whole string correctly? Maybe I missed some characters at the end as well. Oh yeah, I didn't copy the whole string. No, I did. Let's just try that again. Policy ID. Now there's another reason this might be happening, but this is the perfect thing for us to see today. All right, that time I got the whole string. And without switching back and forth, let's just check if that works. All right, it doesn't. Now this is really common. I'm really glad this is happening. Now, part of the reason here might be that I shouldn't be using policy ID. And we will look at that in just a second. But if I'm not sure why this is happening, I can use some other console logs to check on a couple of things. So for example, right here, let's just try to console log the target asset. And I'll just return that to the console. So this is going to give me a message that says target asset, and then it's going to tell me what the target asset is. And if this is undefined, obviously I know I've got to fix that. Let's take a look. So clearly when the wallet is not connected, target asset is undefined. If I connect the wallet, we're not even getting to that point. Why not? So, right, I triggered, oh yeah, we are. No, we're not. Okay, so we're not even getting, after I connected my wallet, we're not even firing this bit on line 16. Oh, aha. Here's why. Okay. So notice, you see why I was saying line 16. This console log is on line 16. Watch this one more time. Ready? We can see target asset undefined from line 16 right here. But watch my logs very closely. When I connect the wallet, this is not going to happen again. Watch. See? Line 23 happened again. We logged the assets. We logged that list right here. That's all good. But why isn't line 16 firing off again after we connect a wallet? Huh. Well, to understand, you need to understand what the use effect hook does, right? We said that this can run some code based on or as an effect of something else changing. And when do we want to run this code? I open up the page. We look for some assets. It's likely those assets are undefined if a wallet has not been connected yet. But then, eventually, the user connects their wallet. And when they do, this use assets hook is going to change the value of our list of assets. It's actually going to fill it up with assets. And that's what we see happening. Look, line 23 fires a bunch of times over here. Oh, we checked assets, it's undefined. We checked again, it's undefined. We checked and checked and checked again, it was undefined. But then finally, it's at a certain point, line 23 stopped being undefined, and now it had this list of connected assets. And what I'd like to do is, when this change happens, I'd like to fire this logic right here. And there's a clever thing that use effect does to let me do this. See these little brackets here? Maybe you noticed these when I typed them in before. What are these for? This is called the dependency list or the dependency array of the use effect hook. And I want this use effect hook to run again every time the value of assets changes. If I save this, just by adding that one word right there, I think this is going to be fixed. Watch both the screen. This nope should turn into success. And we should see that line 16 is going to fire again. Let's see if it works. Well, it's still undefined, but at least it fired again. That's good. Okay. So now at least we're using the use effect hook correctly. But it seems that we are not getting policy ID to work. Now, the reason this is happening, I can mouse over this And you can see that it says policy ID does not exist on type asset. Well, where'd type asset come from? That's what this type here, returned by use assets, is, right? And what the heck? It says that policy ID is not defined on this type, but I can see it right here. What's going on? Well, under the hood, Mesh is still in development. And if you go into the source code for Mesh, you're going to find a couple of things. One thing you'll find is that indeed this asset type returned by use assets is only includes the, let's look at it. Let's go here, right? This asset type as it's defined in the Mesh SDK only includes a unit and a quantity. You're right, it doesn't include a policy ID. Now, it could, and this is an example of an update that somebody can make to the Mesh SDK. And as a matter of fact, the new release is fixing a lot of this kind of thing. Okay, so we're not going to worry too much about this now because Mesh is still being built. But you can see there's an inconsistency between the type that's defined right here and the actual data that's coming through from the query that's being run. There's a bunch of different ways to deal with this, but remember this fact that the unit, which is provided, starts with the policy ID. And how long is a policy ID? This is trivia, but who knows it? A Cardano policy ID is always, can you see it at the bottom of my screen? 56 characters. Okay. So in other words, instead of checking that the policy ID matches, because that's not allowed, what if I say asset.unit? I don't need the whole unit. All I need are the first 56 characters. So I can use substring, and I can take the substring that goes from the beginning of the string for the first 56 characters. And I can see if that matches the policy ID. Now, what does this say? This says implicitly has a return type any. Let's fix that by saying that asset is an asset. And we can import that from Mesh SDK. Notice there's also this thing, asset extended. This is actually really nice. It's not going to work, but this asset extended is where they hold this other stuff, policy ID, etc. So you might find yourself using asset extended. The good news is you can do everything I'm showing you with just the unit and the quantity, because we don't really need the fingerprint for many things. That's a debatable point, and we could look at that later. But really, for simple UI, we're not going to be using the fingerprint very often. And both the asset name and the policy ID can both be derived from the unit itself. Okay, so that's what's happening under the hood. But for now, let's just use the asset type. And let's import that from Mesh. Okay, finally, we have no errors on the screen. Let's save this. Let's go back and take a look. Still says nope, because I got to connect my wallet again. And what I expect to see, it's line 17 now, because I've added a little bit. I added an import, right? After I connect my wallet, I expect the use effect to fire once again. I expect the target asset to finally be something, and I should see success on the screen. Let's see if it happens. Still undefined. All right. Let's do a different thing. instead of using find, oh, you know what happened? I know what happened. I know. This is a silly thing about JavaScript. I shouldn't have used these curly brackets right here. I should have used, I think, parentheses. Let's just see if this changes it. Yeah, there's still no errors. Let's just check if that was the problem. This is one of those silly JavaScript things. There we go, success. Target asset, here it is. Okay, so this is where we're gonna finish for today because we're at the 1 hour mark. But I hope that was a pretty good overview of just what it looks like to start screwing around and trying to solve a problem. Chris, we answered maybe the first half of your question. How can I change the UI depending on what assets somebody has in their wallet? This is a really basic example right here, but from this, you can do a lot more advanced stuff. And then, of course, the thing we didn't look at all is how do we now display an NFT image if it exists? And I propose that's where we pick up next week. How's that sound?
Good.
Okay. A lot of this stuff is in the PPBL 2023 content that's still posted, and we could look at that too for some tips. Okay, so maybe if you look through that, I know that the course is not live and you can't work through it on chain, but you can still read what's there. And everything I just showed you right here is covered in that course. Additionally, NFT images are covered there too. But I think this is great. If we just start from scratch, we build this up together. So we'll find a policy ID that represents an NFT, and we'll see if we can get it to work next week. How does that sound? All right. Thanks for being here for session number 1, y'all. It's excited to be started, and now we can build some momentum in the weeks to come. I'm just checking the chat. Yeah, Demi, this is recorded. We live stream to YouTube and to Twitter. So you can check out the Gimbal Labs YouTube page and you'll see this live recording there.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Just one more question. Is it being ordered in the YouTube channel as a series? Like, is it being recorded as a series where we have each lecture connected to the previous one? Because it seems I missed the previous session.
This is session number, yeah, this is session number 1. You didn't miss anything. We got started today.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, I see.
And we will make a playlist for these. That's great.
I see. Okay. Finally, how exactly is the course organized? At the beginning of the course, you asked what we want to learn. Is it based off of what we, the learners, choose to learn, or is there a predefined organized topics?
Excellent.
In
So
the
this
curriculum
this was a live coding session today. You can think of it like a study group that just gets together to learn stuff. The course is being written right now, and it's going to be released in the next couple of months. Okay, but this is not a course, so don't.
I see.
There's no plan here. This is just people showing up who want to figure some things out together.
I see.
I taught what I taught today because of input from Chris at the start of the session.
Okay. So it's like a session where if you have taken the course and you have questions or things that aren't clear, you can bring them up here and then bring them to the table, like bring them to the group where we look at it and
That's correct.
Have it explained. Okay.
Just keep in mind there is no course yet, right? So you're exactly right.
I see.
Once the course exists, this space will be where you can come to ask questions. Right now, the course does not exist, so you can come and bring any questions about Mesh that you might have.
Oh, right. I see. Okay. I would go over the the session again on YouTube. And then if I have any other further question, I'll just post that in the Discord server.
Perfect. All right. Yeah, we're underway. This is exciting. I hope it's fun to play around with some of these ideas that I showed you today, and we'll get it going again next week. All
Yeah,
right,
thank you very
everybody.
much, Jay.
You bet.
Thank
You
you
bet.
very much. It was awesome.
Till next time. See everybody
Yes,
soon.
sir.
Cheers.
See you guys later. Bye.
I thank you.
Bye, Chris. Later, Seb.